Joe Biden has said time and time again that he never knew anything about his son Hunter's businesses.
My son about his overseas business.
I have never discussed with my son or my brother or anyone else anything having to do with their businesses, period.
You stand by your statement that you did not discuss any of your son's overseas business dealings with him?
Yes, I stand by that statement.
Well, he's a liar. New revelations show Joe agreed to pay off his son's legal bills for his China deals. Can you believe that? According to emails obtained by the Daily Mail, Hunter's personal assistant wrote to Joe Biden's aides in January of 2019 saying this: I spoke with Hunter today regarding his bills. It is my understanding that Hunt's dad will cover these bills in the short term as Hunter transitions in his career. Attached to that email was a spreadsheet with bills totaling more than $700,000, including legal fees for Hunter's work with the company in bed with the Chinese, which Hunter had a 10% stake in through 2021 when Joe was president. But for a guy that claims he was the poorest member of Congress, it is worth asking how Joe had that much money just sitting in the bank ready to be blown on Hunter's business expenses. Well, the Daily Mail is also reporting that Joe Biden had over $5 million in unexplained income at the time. Millions that he just forgot to put in his transparency report. So where'd all of that money come from, Joe? Does it have anything to do with the 10% cut from Hunter's China deal? You know, the one Hunter was putting aside for the big guy? Hunter obviously knew his pop had that kind of money to blow, so of course he was going to ask him to foot the 700 G's bill. And why else would Joe try to hide the money that he claims came from his book sales and his speaking fees? By the way, would you pay Joe to speak for anything? I wouldn't pay him $5. The guy can't talk. How much could he have really made speaking fees? And his book didn't even sell. So where'd the money come from? I mean, if this is all true, not only is Joe Biden a stone-cold liar, but his paws were all over these deals. Dana Loesch is a nationally syndicated radio host. All right, so what do you think about this new revelation, Dana?
Well, first, Jesse, I have to disagree with you because I would absolutely pay Joe Biden to come speak because it would be hilarious. It would be absolutely hysterical.
The comedy tour.
We would get like we'd get another story about Big Mama or the Freddy Krueger janitor in the pool basement who cut a chain to go and beat some gangster named after cereal. It would be amazing. So I definitely would pay.
You're right. I stand corrected.
But as far as the money that this family is making, his remark that he was the poorest member of Congress, I know people who would cut their arms off to be that poor. Who wouldn't want to be poor like Joe Biden's poor? I mean, that's kind of an insult. But, you know, when you can hide your cash and the press doesn't ask any questions about it and any kind of public interest in transparency as it relates to your family's finances and associations with businesses that are owned and operated by the communist Chinese government, well, then that's suppressed on social media. None of that stuff gets asked. None of that. I mean, reporters aren't doing their job. So there are a lot of questions. I'm particularly interested, Jesse, in the family's association with companies that are run by the communists in China, namely where it concerns any kind of rare earth minerals. Like Hunter Biden, for instance, his firm, and I think it was Rosemont Seneca before it ended up being closed, or before he folded it, ended up working with a company in China, and they were trying to get control of one of the rare earth metals mines that was in the Dominican or in the Republic of Congo, Democratic Republic of Congo. And that was one of the cobalt mines. That, of course, then means that Joe Biden, Jesse, is making a ton of money off his Green New Deal, if you think about it, because if this family, if this administration is pushing everybody into EVs and they stand to make money off of this business transaction with Chinese companies that are I mean, there's a lot of questions. You see where I'm going with this.
Yeah, I see where you're going.
There needs to be transparency.
And Hunter was the lawyer for the guy that was bribing the African leaders to get access to the cobalt. You know, here's my interest, Dana. He made not a lot of money or disclosed not much when he was VP, but that window between vice president and president, that 4-year window, He almost made $20 million. He reported a lot of money. Now, his book didn't sell, and no one paid him to speak at all. His speaking fees were not high. So the question the media needs to ask is, where did all those millions of dollars come from, right? Where did all that money come from if it wasn't from books or speeches?
Yeah, it had to come from somewhere. I mean, this is cash that they need to be completely transparent about. And still, too, that even though that there was that window where he wasn't in D.C., there was the leveraging of the vice presidential office. I mean, if you remember, there were a number of times that Hunter Biden's business associates were on the White House visitor logs visiting Obama Biden and meeting with Biden, meeting with the vice president's office.
He doesn't remember, Dana.
He was leveraging those relationships.
But he doesn't remember 19 visits.
Tonight. He remembers. It's all fake. He's pretending to be this nice, forgetful papa. Nobody believes it. We remember how mean he was during the Reagan years. Everybody remembers how mean he was when he was questioning Clarence Thomas. They know how they made this money. He's playing dumb about it, and they're trying to leverage Hunter Biden's inappropriate activities as a way to, this shame. Don't ask our family about this. It's too sensitive. You wanted this office. You get the transparency that comes with it.
Yeah, you can't play dumb for too long, or else it's just insulting everyone's intelligence. All right, Dana Loesch, thank you so much, as always.
Thanks, Jesse. Good to see you.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.